Hi knitters, welcome to episode 88 of the Knitty McPurly podcast. My name is DevinATknittymcpurly. You can find me online as Knitty McPurly on Instagram. You can go to my website at DevinATknittymcpurlyDOTcom. And if you want to email me, I am DevinATknittymcpurlyDOTcom. I actually stuck a little face that I got out of the HGTV magazine. I stuck it above my camera, so I'm going to be talking to this lovely person while I podcast so I don't get any comments about looking weird. I'm drinking coffee out of this mug that belongs to my daughter. It says, "Please do not annoy the writer. She may put you in a book and kill you." She loves this mug. Do you ever do things to look out for future you? My husband literally has a drawer in our living room filled with his socks because future him is going to find those socks and be like, yes, I don't have to go back upstairs because I forgot my socks. The socks are right there. Look out for future knitting you by ordering a Knitty McPurly advent calendar. You can go to my website. You can pre-order it now. They will ship in October, which is not very far away. It's like 2 months. Oh my gosh, that's scary. Probably toward the end of October, so about 3 months. But look out for future you who says, what am I going to work on this Advent? What am I going to open every day of Advent to commemorate this amazing season of the year? Oh, there he goes. He fell off. Isn't he happy? Look how happy he is. All right, I don't have any tape. It's fine. No one cares. It's all fine. Anyway, go get an Advent calendar if you haven't already. If you already ordered one, I am hard at work on these puppies. They're awesome. I'm so excited about them. I'm working on the pattern that goes with them right now, and it is so, so fun. So I was in Ohio last weekend, and that's why I didn't have a podcast for you. My brother and his family live there, and it has been a slow reentry. Like, it was a lot. I did not have my husband, and the car ride home kind of did me in. I was kind of done in by that. I was a little bit like shell-shocked. Like we all walked in the door and I just went straight to bed. Like, I'm done. And worst of all, I forgot my knitting. I didn't have any knitting the whole trip. So that was kind of a bummer, but I'm glad to be home. It was a good trip and I'm glad to be home. It's my son's birthday next week, this coming week. It's Sunday. Took me this long just to be like, okay, I can do a podcast now. I'm ready. There's only one more month of summer. I don't even know what happened to the summer. It just kind of, it got away from me. But anyway, let's talk progress and shop news. So I have all these ideas in my head of things that I want to knit. And frankly, I'm not sure which one of them is going to make it to fruition. I have a Christmas sweater in my head. And I also, while I was in Ohio, I came across this toy. This is a rainbow slug. Because why not? My nephew, who is, I think, about to be 17, he and my daughter and a couple of their other cousins were at like a gas station in central Ohio, and they found this rainbow slug and had to have it, obviously. And it was so delightful that I thought, I need to knit a rainbow slug. That has to happen. So Christmas sweater, rainbow slug, and we're going to be talking more a little later in the podcast about what to do when you see something that has to be knit. So anyway, I don't have any knitting because I left my knitting at home. And even then, what I was working on was for the advent calendar, so it's super secret knitting. But these are kind of things that are rolling around in my head. Like, these are things that need to be knit. I've noticed that the bright green and the deep red, those two colors are kind of coming back onto the scene right now. And I noticed that I love them. Do you know that scene in The Devil Wears Prada where Anne Hathaway, it's like at the beginning of the movie where she's kind of frumpy and dumpy and she's wearing this shade of blue, and Meryl Streep goes through the whole circuit of why that shade of blue ended up in the discount store where Anne Hathaway came to buy it. and how these colors move down the fashion zeitgeist to a point where we're like, I like that color. All of a sudden I like it. And really it's because we've been seeing it all this time and it's been building up in our minds as something that we like. But anyway, that green and that red I think would look amazing in a Christmas sweater. Because people have all kinds of sweaters that they call Christmas sweaters. But I would love to knit a Christmas sweater that is non-ugly. The ugly Christmas sweater is a total thing. We all know about that. But also Christmassy. Like I've seen a lot of Christmas sweaters. I have this one friend who wears a Christmas sweater to our annual Christmas party, just our group of friends every year. And I'm like, it's not Christmassy. Like, stop. This is just not a Christmas sweater at all. So anyway, those are the things that are in my brain. The everywhere sweater pattern is happening. I need to get on the tech editor schedule, but within the next couple months, I have a lot of people who signed up to test knit that, and that's going to be a really fun fall knit because it is a bulky weight sweater held double with mohair. So it is quick, super, super fast. I'm wearing one of my Faucette sweaters today. It is Sunday, and I wore this to church this morning. This is one of my favorite Faucette outfits where you put it over a dress, which is really nice because if you're a person like me who's not really into the cropped sweater, you don't really want to show any belly, wearing a cropped sweater with a dress is always nice. This Faucette pattern, I think I talked about it last week because I just knit one, or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. This was my third one. I now have 4. But it's my most popular pattern and it is super wearable. So now that I'm looking at myself, I think I'm a little crooked. Am I crooked now? I don't know. I think these things matter when no one cares. I know that you don't care. It's all fine. But really, I've been working on a lot of big stuff. The Advent calendar and the retreat coming up in January. This just keeps getting closer and people are emailing me with ideas, which is amazing. I have heard so many good ideas. Somebody just messaged me and said, what if we had like a give and take table, where you could deposit things that you would like to see go to a good home, either yarn or knitting notions or whatever. And then you could take something if there was something that you saw that spoke to you. I love that idea, especially because a lot of people are driving. Some people who are flying, they could pack a small amount of that in their luggage, I would imagine, like maybe a Ziploc bag full if they wanted to. Obviously, it would be completely optional. But I just love that idea. I think that is awesome. So many good ideas. This thing is going to be great. I would be lying to you if I said that I did not wake up in a cold sweat every now and then because I am worried that it's not going to live up to people's expectations. But I just have to tell myself, all we want out of this is a weekend away in a beautiful place, knitting with nice people. Like, that's the goal. If I'm not funny, if, one day the dinner is subpar, like, it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be fine. So anyway, those are the things that are really occupying my brain right now. A lot of rainbow slug thoughts, a little bit of cold sweat. Yeah. So that's where we are right now. I had a 25% off sale on July 11th because that is my shop anniversary or shop-iversary, if you like. And you guys cleared me out, which was really, really nice. Thank you so much, all of you who shopped the sale. It was super successful. I hope everybody got what they ordered and everything arrived safely and everyone is very happy. I don't spend that much time on Instagram anymore. A lot of times people will post their packages on Instagram and I just don't make it over there very much anymore. I was just saying to my husband, I need an employee. Do you know how much more work we could get done if I had an amazing employee? I don't know anything about that, but it's in my mind. Wouldn't that be great? So anyway, the word of the week. This week, we are going to talk about the word texture. And when I thought about that word, I thought of textile and also text, like written words. So I'm going to talk about the first two things today, not so much about the second. That I'm not sure if it even relates. It has to, maybe next week. But today we're going to talk about the Latin textere, which means to weave, text meaning woven, and textura meaning weaving. So text means to weave or woven. Interesting, as knitters, right? So this entered the English language in the late Middle English, 15th century-ish, referring to a woven fabric. In the 1650s, the word texture came to mean a structural character of something, like textural, referring like to wicker or rattan or wattle framework. Not sure what that is, but in reference to wicker or rattan, it's like basket weaving, you know, so something with texture would have a structure to it. In 1888, it was first used as a verb to texture something or to give it texture. So then when I looked it up in the OED, I found more detailed references. Like in 1578, in John Bannister's A History of Man, he describes body parts as woven, like the texture of the heart, the actual ventricles in the heart, which I thought was interesting. And then about 200 years later, 1774, a spider's web is described as texture, which makes sense because it's woven, right? Or at least it looks woven. I don't think the spider is actually weaving because the threads stick. They don't have to do that, but it looks woven. Now, the definition of texture being the character of a textile fabric as to being fine or coarse or whatever entered the language in 1685 with Cowper and Boyle, and it's so interesting to read. If you look in the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, you can read the actual first times they used these in written language. And that is so cool because they were pioneers. They were pioneers of language, using it in new ways, which I love because we're still doing that today. Words are constantly changing. They're constantly evolving. We're always using things in new ways, for better or for worse. It is what it is. Okay, topic of the week. Now, last time I talked about dip stitches, and I was under the impression that these were something new. And many of you said to me, these aren't new. Like, there are patterns out there with the dip stitches in them. Many of you cited to me the Sorrel Sweater by Wool and Pine. And I'll put up some pictures while I'm talking here. This sweater is really beautiful. Someone said there was a series of sweaters. I just looked up this one in particular, and it is really, really pretty. I've seen this technique done in other ways, not using dip stitches, but this one in particular is really cool. However, I think the beauty of this sweater is its simplicity and the ability to use different yarn and to kind of fade it in and out however you like. I don't know that the dip stitches are what I particularly love about the sweater. I think I love the way people have styled it because it's kind of fitted and kind of long, so it can be worn in many different ways, like tucked in and whatnot. I don't know that the dip stitches are what I particularly love about this sweater, but many people said that they do love this sweater, and I agree. I think it looks amazing. But the point here is that these dip stitches are not new. Here I thought 2 weeks ago when I recorded that podcast that they were on the cutting edge. Someone said to me, dip stitches are in Barbara Walker's second treasury of knitting patterns, and they are correct. The first book is called, obviously, The First Treasury, and it is blue. That one was published, I think, in 1968. This one was published in 1970. So they are at least that old, probably older if I had to guess. But this is the earliest reference. In fact, let me put it out there to you. This is 1970. Does anybody know of an earlier reference to dip stitches? An internet search and a search of just the books that I own did not turn up anything earlier than 1970. So I don't know if Barbara Walker came up with them or if they existed before that. And they're not even in a section marked like dip stitches. They're just in here and there. And strangely enough, they don't look like what we think of as a dip stitch. Like this is dip and slip tweed. And that doesn't look like a dip stitch at all in the way that I think about it. And there's another one in here called, let's see, dip stitch check, which does not look, I mean, you can see the dip stitch in there, but it doesn't look like what you think of when you think of a dip stitch. And then there's a couple other ones in here. One is called fan dip stitch. And this looks a little bit more like you can kind of see what they were doing there. You see the dips. But again, what took place on the sorrel sweater and in those hats that I referenced last time is something different. So, anyway, that made me wonder about other esoteric stitches that are out there that we just don't use very often. And honestly, the first book has a lot of stitches that designers use all the time. If you get the first book, these books, I feel like they're a little bit pricey. I just have the first two. I didn't bring it with me, I don't think. The first book, though, is one that all the designers have. And if you look in there, you'll see all the stitches that you recognize. The second one has ones that are a little bit more esoteric. And one of the problems as a designer when you're looking at a stitch, especially if it's one where you're like, I love the way that that looks. A lot of times it is something that is hard to work. It's hard to get right. And when you're putting out a pattern that you want everyone to be able to knit, you're asking people to do something that may or may not be too hard. I don't put a label on my patterns, beginner or intermediate or advanced, because I kind of feel like you can do anything you want if you want it badly enough. I mean, there's nothing that's beyond your ability if you're willing. Like if you want it bad enough, like back when I was running marathons, I remember my brother-in-law at the time would be like, I could never run a marathon. And I'm like, well, that's in here. You know, I'm not fast at all, but I do it. I can do it because I want to do it. If you desire it enough, you can do anything you want. But at the same time, you don't want it to be frustrating. I just sold some yarn for a faucette to a wonderful customer. She's been a customer a long time. And she's just in the swatching process. And I said, I am so envious of you being at the beginning of a project that you have yarn for that you love. You have a pattern that you love. That's just such a great spot to be in. But anyway, the good part about that is that it's doable. If you have stitch patterns that are too hard, because I don't know about you, but I know I've embarked on patterns like that where I just said you can do anything you want, but sometimes it's very frustrating to get there. There is that frustration that you have to overcome if it's a stitch pattern that's just hard. So, you know, in the instance of the faucette, for example, there's nothing hard in it at all. It has a little bit of stranded color work, which I guess is the hardest thing. Right here, and this is mosaic here, but there's just a little bit more. Oops, a little bit. There's a tiny bit of stranded color work. It's mostly mosaic, but looking down the barrel of an awesome project that will not offer you frustration is great. So yes, you can do anything that you want, but we try to minimize the frustration. That's what I'm getting at. So one thing that I have really enjoyed, I didn't bring the book up here, but I'll put a picture up on the screen, are the Japanese cable and lace patterns. They are so complicated. I know I've talked about this book before. I love it. It is amazing, but it is very, very complicated. I used one of these in a much more simplified form for my watership sweater to do the brambly part at the top, because I wanted it to be fun and interesting, but also to minimize on that frustration. So getting back to the book, and whatever rabbit hole you want to jump down, because that's kind of where the dip stitches are. Like, that's a rabbit hole that if you want to jump down that, you can find all sorts of stuff in there, such as the ones in here or something like that's in the sorrel sweater. But there's that line you have to walk of being interesting but not too frustrating. So today's rabbit hole that we're going to jump down are some of these stitches are just so cool. Like, this one is called Fluffy Brioche. Isn't that cool? It has the brioche stitch. She says all brioche patterns are fluffy and loose, but this one is particularly so. It's very honeycomb-like. Cool, and you cast on and bind off very loosely. So this is kind of a honeycomb brioche, and here we have a diagonal brioche. So I wanted to talk about mainly stitches that looked a little bit like crocheted stitches, like these berry stitches. And they're worked in a really cool way. The one that I really looked at, here's a couple more. Berry in a box, gooseberry stitch. Wouldn't these make cool? What's that one called? Crochet knit mesh and pine burr. Crochet knit mesh right there. So it's knit, but it's almost as if it's crocheted. This one that I looked at in depth is called the portcullis stitch. A portcullis is, I think it's that, like in The Princess Bride, where the gate falls down. It's that gate that comes down that kind of sticks into the ground. Isn't that what a portcullis is? But this is worked with a purl on the wrong side, and then on the right side, into the same stitch, you knit one, yarn over, knit one into the same stitch. Then you slip one, knit two together, pass the slip stitch over. Like, how cool is that? It just looks crocheted, doesn't it? And there's a bunch like that, like this raisin stitch. This is a good rabbit hole book. If you're interested in rabbit holes, I am very, very much so. It just has cool stuff. Like, look at this cool stuff. And like I said, as a designer, you see these things and you think these are cool, but will, Jane Q Knitter be interested in going through that portal of frustration to get this in the end? Is it worth it? That's the question. So that's why patterns, for example, like the Faucette or anything with stranded color work or mosaic color work, those are pretty simple procedures to work. People know how to do them. And so you can get something that looks really intricate, but that is super, super easy to do. So there is that balance. And so that kind of begs the question, what kind of knitter are you? I feel like there's the basic stockinette knitter, which I sometimes am. We probably are all sometimes. And then there's the it looks complicated, but it's actually easy kind of knitter, which we probably are sometimes. But then there's this third kind, which I don't know how often I am. I don't know how often you are either. The knitter who says, this is crazy hard, but it looks amazing in the end. And I'm willing to walk through that portal of frustration, potential frustration to get there. One example of a stitch pattern that I personally find very difficult to work is herringbone. I'll put up a picture. To work this, and I haven't done it in years, maybe it would be easier for me now, but back when I tried it, I found it to be very, very difficult. You work it on needles that are much bigger than what you would normally use for the yarn to get this herringbone texture. And it looks really, really cool. It looks very woven, but I have tried and failed so many times that I just kind of quit trying. And I really should try again because I'm older and wiser now. So maybe I would do a better job with Okay, knitting fantasies. On another note, I wanted to tell you that my Hepburn sweater finally made it onto Ravelry. I just hadn't been over there, so today I put that up. Hepburn has been out for about a month now, but if you wanted to look at it on Ravelry, just go search it up, click on it maybe, and that will boost it. And hopefully some people who had not seen it before, because they had not visited my site, will see it now and they'll get to come and check it out. So go give that some love. If you've knit a Hepburn, or if you're in the process of knitting one, please link your project. That would be amazing. You guys do so much for me. I feel like I'm just me, and you guys do so much for me. You support my shop, you link your projects, you tag me on Instagram. You're so great. Thank you so much for being so great. With regard to things we want to knit, today I want to talk about things that are not knitting patterns, but that inspire us to knit, like the rainbow slug. When you see something like that and you're like, this has to become a toy. And I've got to tell you guys, the more I talk about it, the more I'm ready to knit this amazing rainbow slug. I love it so much. I'm like, I need it in my life. I need it in my house. I need my children to play with it and fight over it and say, I want this one. This one's mine. Do you ever see something? Sometimes it's a thing in a store. I'm that crazy person who takes pictures of sweaters in stores and stops strangers on the street and say, I love your sweater. I design sweaters. Can I take your picture? Yes, I have done that. I am that crazy person. And I've never had anybody say no, maybe because I'm nice. But still, that's pretty generous. But if somebody asked me that, I'd be like, yeah, sure, go ahead, take my picture. When you see something that you just want to knit, what do? I'm going to show you something today that belongs to my daughter that she's had, I don't know, maybe a year, and it's a little smushed because she snuggles with it a lot, but it's so cute. I just want to knit it. Oh, look at him. He's got tiny little scales and little pink cheeks and no real face. Isn't he adorable? And he is this light blue color. I want to knit this so much. And the only reason I haven't is because I don't have time. I'm telling you, I need an employee. How do I get one? How do I get a good employee? Because I can only afford one. I don't know. But how often do you see something that you have to knit and you just make up a pattern for it? Does anybody else do this? I feel like this needs to become a knitting pattern. This and the rainbow slug. Just adorable. So today's knitting fantasies are things that we see that we want to knit that don't have a pattern, and we have to come up with one. I think I would make the arms and the legs even a little shorter, just to make him especially short and pudgy, with the tiny little tail and his tiny little rounded, like so non-threatening, right? Rounded scales and his little pink cheeks, his little eyeballs. Oh, he's so cute. I don't know what this guy's name is. I don't even know if he has a name. I'm sure she doesn't know that I have him right now, but I'm gonna hold him while I talk. There are some pieces of art that just inspire you to create more art. When my son was little, we used to read the book, The Little Blue Truck. Is it just called The Little Blue Truck? I want to put a picture up so you'll be able to see, but this book has such amazing art in it that every time I would read it, I would just want to go paint because I love the art in it so much. I love art inspiring art. So anyway, that's today's knitting fantasies. It's really today's artistic fantasies. Things that we wish we had time to do and wish we could indulge in artistically a little bit more, but don't necessarily have the time. Okay, so here's what happened. Today's So Here's What Happened comes to us from a lovely podcast watcher named Megan. She says she is a newer subscriber. Yay! Thanks so much, Megan. If you have a knitting story, I'll say this before I read. If you have a knitting story and you would like to share it with the podcast watchers, that would be amazing. Never before have we had a story that we've said, oh, that's boring. Do you know what I mean? We love the stories, whether it's cute, heartwarming, funny, delightful, ridiculous, hilarious, absurd. Share it with us. You can send it to me and I'll read it, such as this one. You can send me a video. Those are my favorite. I love videos because then I can see your face and everyone can see your face. But send me a knitting story, DevinATknittymcpurlyDOTcom. It is below also if you don't know how to spell it. Okay, this is what Megan has to say. She says, I learned to knit when I was 23 years old. I was facing the first time I would live alone ever in my 23 years, and I couldn't fathom what to do with all that time alone. I figured a hobby would help. I didn't know anyone who knit, and I'm not quite sure why it occurred to me to learn that particular hobby. But I signed up for a beginner class through a partnership of the local community college and park district. That's awesome. Gosh, I wish everybody had that everywhere. I was immediately hooked. I was pretty fearless. My first project was a felted tote, and my second was a cabled sweater. What? I'm kind of like that too, Megan. I just jump right in. I'm like, what's the worst thing that could happen, right? It doesn't turn out. Who cares? She says, this was in a time before YouTube, so any new techniques I wanted to learn, I used books. Fast forward 6 years to me expecting my first child. I was thrilled to be able to create usable items for this new baby. They always tell you to nap when the baby naps. Well, I didn't. I knit. Yes. There also isn't a lot to do when you only have one child and she's a newborn. Amen, sister. I remember those first few years, and they are kind of lonely and boring. I agree. The baby sleeps a lot and it can be pretty boring. I got it in my head to knit her baptism dress. I searched and searched for a pattern for this baptism dress, but I just couldn't find what I was looking for. So I, for my first time in my knitting career, took a pattern for a baby dress and altered it to meet my ideas in my head. Yes, I love it. I used a beautiful silk yarn and got to work. Her baptism came and I was so happy and proud of myself I could burst. I'll put up a picture of this adorable baby and how amazing she looked in this dress. She was not only adorable, but beautiful. It turned out exactly how I imagined it. We had a lovely ceremony and then met with our families after church at the same restaurant that we had our rehearsal dinner. My sister-in-law was sitting across the table from me. Sisters-in-law can be tricky. This particular one is my husband's sister. We have never quite gelled. She doesn't really understand me, nor I her. So imagine how I felt when she leaned across to me and said, "Doesn't it bother you that you spent all that time on that dress and she will never wear it again?" Well, my spirit just deflated. Some people should just keep their mouths shut. It was hurtful, but I rallied, good job, Megan, and said, "Not at all. I don't care that she'll never wear it again. It made me so happy to make it. You won't ever wear your wedding dress again, but wearing it made you happy." I learned some lessons that day. If it brings you joy, do it. Don't listen to the other voices eager to stomp on your happiness. And when your sister-in-law sends you pictures of crocheted items asking you to knit them for her, try to keep the glee out of your voice when you tell her you just couldn't possibly. Not everyone is knit-worthy, but when you find the ones that are, soak in that joy. Yes! Oh my gosh. 1,000 times. Yes. Your response was that response that I would wake up with a day later going, that's what I should have said. That was great. Because honestly, like a baptism dress, like my 3 girls all wore the same baptism dress. And it was not knitted. It was my oldest daughter was born before I learned how to knit. But it will be passed down, you know, like their daughters can wear it. Maeve's dress is pretty girly too, just like the one that my daughters wore. My son wore a different one because it was not quite so girly. But but those are passed downable items. And surely the sister-in-law one day will have a baby that wants to be baptized, right? So, you know, just because somebody only wears something once doesn't make it not special. Yeah. Anyway, Megan, amazing story, amazing on-the-spot comeback, like first place trophy, blue ribbon for that, because I would just have been like, oh yeah, I guess. I don't know. I wouldn't have done that, but I probably would have not said something as eloquent as what you said. Amazing. Please share your knitting story with me. I have a couple more in reserve, but this is a weekly podcast other than last week. And if I end up going to the beach this summer, which maybe, I don't know if we will or not, it's hard to find a place. Did anybody else have a hard time like finding a place if they go to the beach? With our whole family goes, and it's a big family thing. I'm not even really in on the finding of a thing. We just kind of, you know, tag along. But apparently everybody and their brother is going to the beach this year, which is wonderful. But if you don't see a podcast from me that week, that's where we ended up. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Go get an advent calendar if you haven't done one yet. Every time I say that, a bunch of people are like, you wore me down. So thank you so much. And I will see you guys next week. Bye, knitters.